Beauty comes in all shapes, sizes, colors, and forms. My life is about bringing out that beauty in everything and helping others do the same. Hello everyone, my name is Jewel, the owner, designer, and creator behind ShabbyBoutique. If you want to see how I make my creations, the products I use, and how you can create your own home decor from new, thrifted, or found items, then keep watching. For the products I used in this project, I started off with a dark neutral base coat of any color or type of your choice, Sweet Pickins milk paint in creamy, baking soda if you would like some added texture, Sweet Pickins top coat final finish in matte, ReDesign with Prima Gold Wax in eternal, various ribbons and laces, an antique bronze rhinestone brooch of your choice, hot glue, Gorilla Glue, needle and thread, cardstock, and backing paper of your choice. Today we will be working on this lamp that I thrifted. I don't remember how much I paid for it, and the sticker fell off a while ago. We are going to be giving this lamp an Old World Gustavian Finish in French Country colors. And then later in the video, we will be working on a cream colored linen lampshade that I purchased to go with this lamp. I start out by taking this kind of mossy green paint, and I'm just kind of haphazardly painting the lamp. It has a dark bronze color, and I kind of want that to show through in the cracks and crevices. It helps give it that old world look. I do like this DIY paintbrush because of the fact that it's pointy. If I were to want the paint to go into the crevices, I could easily do that. If you notice, I did go ahead and cover all of the things that I don't want to get paint on, such as the cord and the lamp harp. I'm only doing one coat of this green paint. This is just some paint that I got in an oops pile, and it's a nice neutral color and it's great for base coating, but you can use any kind of dark or medium dark paint to use as your undercoat. And don't forget, you're not looking for a perfect finish. Again, I'm going to be texturizing this later. And like I said, I want those dark areas in the crevices to show up. It just helps give it that aged look that I'm going for. I'm going to go ahead and use my old hair dryer on high heat to go ahead and dry this paint quickly. If you don't have an old hair dryer, you can use a heat gun, or you can even set it outside in the sun to have it dry faster. Doing touch-ups to areas that I missed, or areas that have only a light amount of paint on it. Okay, now I poured a little bit of the base color of my paint in a little container, and I'm adding some baking soda to texturize the paint. I'm going to be adding some texture in the flat areas just to give it a little more detail and interest. You can mix this up as thick as you want, depending on how much texture you want. I probably used a 50-50 ratio in this mixture. I realized it wasn't as thick as I wanted, so I added a little more baking soda to it. Okay, once that's all mixed up, I'm going to take the same brush and I'm just going to start stippling it all over the lamp. Again, in all the flat areas or the areas that don't have a lot of detail. I want to add high points and low points so that when I put the top coat of paint on, it will help catch it and give it that texture look that I'm going for. This is a great way just to add some interest and detail and give an aged look to the piece that you're working on. As you're doing it, if you find that there are areas that are maybe a little too chunky or raised up a little more than you like, you can kind of go back over it with the brush and kind of tamp it down a little bit. Or you can wait until the project dries and you can sand down those high points if they're a little too high. After I'm done adding all the texture, I go in with my old hairdryer again and dry everything. Again, you can use a heat gun or set it in the sun to help dry it faster. I'm checking to make sure it's dry. This is just my way. I run my hands over it, and if I don't have paint on my hands, then I know that it's dry. Okay, I'm going to take my Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color Creamy, and that will be my top layer. When mixing Sweet Pickins milk paint, since you can't use it after 24 hours, you only want to mix as much as what you're going to use at the time. I like making smaller batches. You are going to want to mix this 50-50 with water. Or if you want a thicker consistency, you can add a little more paint. When mixing Sweet Pickins milk paint, you want to use warm to hot water. It'll help get all the lumps out of it. You want to mix Sweet Pickins milk paint for a good 2 minutes. Again, this helps get all the lumps out of it. Unless you want that lumpy texture that gives it more of an aged look, then you can just mix it as much as you want or as little as you want. When mixing the milk paint, if you want a chunkier Old World aged look, then you can just mix it until you're happy with the consistency. If you're looking for a smoother finish, then make sure you mix it for at least 2 minutes. This helps get all the lumps out of it. And as you're mixing, if you find that it's too thick, you can add a little more water. If you find that it's too thin, you can add a little bit more of the milk paint powder. With the Sweet Pickins milk paint, you want to let it set for a couple of minutes to thicken up, re-stir it, and then you can use it. Again, I'm using that same DIY brush. And just like I did with the mossy green paint, I'm just haphazardly putting it over the top. I'm looking for more of like a Old World Gustavian finish. So I want it to look like there's several layers of paint that have been worn over time. So again, I'm trying not to get this layer of paint down into the crevices because I want those darker colors to show. It's almost kind of like dry brushing, but you're adding more paint than you would if you were dry brushing. If you can notice on the flatter points where I added all the texture, you can see how when I put the paint over top of it, that it picks up the paint on the top parts of the texture and it leaves it a little darker in the divots. Again, it just adds to that Old World Gustavian finish. And yet again, I'm going to dry this layer of paint with my old hair dryer on high. Since we put the milk paint over top of another paint, you won't get much cracking and chipping because the paint underneath is going to adhere that milk paint to it. But you can get a little bit of chipping and cracking by using a heat gun or a blow dryer on the high heat setting. I think you can see on the top of the lamp there all the texture that I got by adding the baking soda to the base layer. You can see how the milk paint kind of brushed across and left darker areas underneath in the divots. And again, I use my hands over the piece to make sure that the paint is actually dry. No paint on my hands. That means the paint is dry. Now I did only do one coat of the milk paint. Now I'm using Sweet Pickins top coat in matte. The one thing I like about the Sweet Pickins top coat in matte is it actually gives you a matte finish. With polyurethane, it still has kind of a gloss to it. So if you're looking for a truly matte finish, the Sweet Pickins top coat in matte is a good one to use. So again, I'm going to take my DIY brush. Now with this, I want to make sure that I'm getting the sealer into all the cracks and crevices because I want to make sure that the whole piece is sealed. So with this brush, with having the tip on the end, it makes it perfect for getting into all the grooves and the nooks and crannies. I absolutely love the texture on this piece. I think it turned out so good. Now the one thing you'll notice is that as I'm putting the top coat on, the milk paint will get a little darker as it's being sealed. And since I only did one coat, in some places looks like it's thinning out a little bit, and you can kind of see more of the underneath paint coming through. So if you wanted it to be more opaque, you would put 2 coats on. I wanted that color to show through, so that's why I only put 1 coat on. I am going over some of the high points with another coat of the milk paint, just to brighten those areas up a little bit, to give it a little more dimension, since it did become kind of see-through after I put the top coat on. It just gives it some added dimension and brings out that texture a little more. Then I go back over it with some more of the top coat to seal it all in. Now I'm using one of my favorite things for that old world French country style, gold wax. I just rub it on all the high points with my finger to bring out all the detail. I'm using the ReDesign with Prima Gold Wax in Eternal. It has become one of my new favorites. I still like Rub and Buff as well, but it has a tendency to dry out quickly as you're using it. The ReDesign with Prima Gold Wax is really buttery and creamy and easy to use. If you notice, I save all my transfer sheets and I cut them into small pieces, and that's what I use for putting my waxes on. As a crafter, there's a use for everything. I don't throw away my scraps. As you can see, I'm not adding gold wax to the entire thing, just around all the details and the high points. As you can see, here's more of a close-up shot of all that texture that I added with the baking soda and paint mixture. Now for the lampshade. This is actually why I picked the creamy color in the Sweet Pickins milk paint, because it matched the color of this linen lampshade perfectly. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add this cream colored Clooney lace around the bottom. I am using hot glue to put the lace on the lampshade, but if you're going to use a glue gun on lace, make sure you're using one with a fine tip. That way, as you're pressing the lace down, the glue doesn't come up through it, and you can just get a small amount of glue, just enough to hold it without being too much. Also, make sure when you're doing something like this, since the lace has holes and the hot glue is gonna come up through it a little bit, make sure you have some finger protection. You don't want to burn your fingers. Also, when you're doing a project like this and you're not using a lot of hot glue, you want to make sure you're doing smaller sections so the glue doesn't dry before you get to where you need the lace to go. Now that I'm at the end, I'm going to fold over the end and glue that together so that you don't have a raw edge. And then I'm just going to glue it in place. Also, you want to make sure that your edges line up with the seam on the lampshade so that they're not as noticeable. Next, I'm going to add this gold lace trim to the top, but it was rather wrinkled from being in my stash of laces. So I put it between 2 layers of parchment paper and then just used my little iron to iron it smooth and get all the wrinkles out. Next, I'm going to add this gold lace trim to the top of the lampshade. I'm measuring to see how much I need. It just so happens that with this gold lace, the scalloped edges lined up perfectly with the wires on the lampshade. So again, you want to start in the back where the crease is. And then I'm going to cut the lace, allowing for a little extra so that I can fold it back so you don't have a raw edge. I'm going to add some hot glue to the edge. And then I'm going to fold it back so that there's no raw edge. Make sure you pull off any excess glue or glue strings. And then I'm going to finish adhering it down. I realize now this was a horrible angle and you can hardly see what I'm doing, but I can't go back and refilm it. So I thought this lampshade was a little plain and it needed a little something something. So I have a stash of bronze brooches and buttons and things with rhinestones and pearls on them. And I decided that I would take the brooch and make a little removable brooch that you can put on the lampshade, just to give it a little character and whimsy. I'm going to start off by using the chiffon ribbon with a raw edge. It just so happens to match the linen lampshade. So I'm just testing to see what it's going to look like gathered and if I like that or not. So now I'm going to take a needle and thread and I'm going to hand gather this ribbon to make a ruffle. I can't tell you how many times I poked myself as I was doing this, but no blood, so we're good. This ruffle is actually going to go around the outside edge of the brooch. Next, I'm going to take a piece of cardstock and I'm going to kind of trace around the brooch. This is actually what I'm going to adhere the ruffle onto later. Since I want to make this removable, I'm going to cut a slit in the cardstock. That way the back of the brooch can stick through it, and then you can add and remove it onto the lampshade or off of the lampshade. Here I'm taking my X-Acto knife and cutting that slit out of the back for the brooch piece to go through. Here I'm just dry fitting it to make sure that it's going to work. Here I'm just testing out to see how much more of the ruffle I need to make. So I continue ruffling more of the ribbon. Until I have enough to go all the way around. Once I have enough ribbon, I'm going to tie off the end so that it doesn't come ungathered. I probably should have used a wider and off-white thread, but I didn't have any on hand. So now I have my complete circle of ruffled chiffon ribbon. Next, I'm taking this gold colored tulle. I'm going to cut a strip of it, and I am also going to ruffle it just like I did the chiffon ribbon. So now that I have my strip of tulle cut out, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing as I did with the chiffon ribbon, and I'm going to ruffle it by hand. I cut it slightly wider than the chiffon ribbon because I'm going to put this behind it, and so it's just going to peek out a little bit. I thought that would help give a little more contrast. Since the chiffon ribbon was the same color as the linen on the lampshade, it would just kind of give it a little bit of a border, a little bit of a contrast, and make it stand out more. Now that I've ruffled all the tulle, I'm just finishing off the end and creating sort of a ruffled circle. So here I am erasing all of my pencil marks. I'm cutting out a second piece because at first I was going to sandwich the ruffles between 2 layers of the cardstock, but I'm pretty sure I wound up only using one of them. I'm very picky about making sure that all of my items are finished. So I'm actually going to be taking this paper that I printed out that I use for the backs of my decoupaged ornaments. I'm using a glue stick to glue the cardstock onto the paper. Just so that it makes it finished. And it's not just a piece of white cardstock. Just so it dries quicker, I'm taking my blow dryer to it. I have just never been one of those people to slap some paint on something and call it a day. I believe in having details and making sure that items are finished. So I always take a lot of time with the items that I create. Especially if I'm selling it, I want to make sure that when you're purchasing my items that you're getting a good quality piece. I want the items that I create to last for many years. And I want you to be happy with your purchase. I'm just cutting out that section for the brooch part to go through. I'm just cutting it down to size to make sure not too much of it is showing from the back. I'm going to start by gluing on the tulle layer. Again, make sure when you're doing something like this that you have finger protection. The glue will come through that tulle. And I'm picking off any glue that may have seeped out so you don't see it. Next, I'm going to be gluing on the chiffon layer. And this is when I realized that adding the other piece of cardstock, A, you would be able to see it through the brooch, and B, it would add too much bulk and the pin part wouldn't be able to stick out the back. So that was when I decided just to stick with the one piece of cardstock in the back. And here I am hot gluing the chiffon ribbon to the tulle ribbon. If you notice, as I'm gluing the ruffles down, I do it just as if you were upholstering the seat of a chair. I work on one side, then go to the next side, the opposite side, and then I do the other sides. Since you can see through the brooch, I decided that I should probably put some of that chiffon ribbon over top of the cardstock so that you can't see the cardstock itself. Since the chiffon is see-through, I do double it over as well. That way you can't see through it as well. And also you'll have a nice finished edge butting up to where the hole is for the back of the brooch. As I'm looking at it, I'm thinking it's missing something. It needs a little something more. So then I decide that I need to add some of that Clooney lace. I believe it also helps tie in all the different fabrics and trims and laces that I used on the lampshade itself. The gold tulle is the same color as the gold lace that I used around the top. As I'm gluing the lace down, I'm giving it a slight gather. Since I'm going around a round object, you need to have a little extra for it to lay flat. When you get to the end, you do want to overlap the lace a little bit. Just so it blends in and it's not an abrupt stop. With having all the layers of lace and tulle and ribbon, the back of the brooch wasn't sticking out far enough so that I could adhere it or pin it to the lampshade. So I just went ahead and removed that brooch piece so that I can just glue it to the back of the cardstock. So now that I like the way it looks, I'm going to go ahead and use Gorilla Glue, and I'm going to attach the brooch to the layers of lace and tulle. For this, I would not use hot glue. The hot glue is going to pop off the metal on the brooch. Using Gorilla Glue is your best bet. Or some sort of tacky glue, E6000, something like that. Now I'm going to set that aside so that it can set up for a bit. I'm putting some books on top of it just to kind of weigh it down to make sure it adheres really well. Again, I want to make sure that you're getting a good quality piece and that nothing is going to fall apart. So this is the next day, and I'm going to go ahead and glue the pin part of the brooch to the back. Again, this way it's removable, so if you want to vacuum your lampshade, you can remove the brooch, vacuum it easily, and then put the brooch back on. Or if you decide you don't want to use the brooch, you can use it on something else. And I didn't show it, but I did cover up the hole where the brooch pin part was supposed to come through. Again, I always make sure that my pieces are finished and they look good. So here is pictures of the finished lamp with the lampshade. I really think it came out gorgeous. If you look at the close-up picture, you can see the detail with all the chippiness and the darkness and the crevices and the look of layered paint. Just gives it that Gustavian Old World finish that I just absolutely love. You can also see the texture that adding the baking soda to the base paint added in the flat areas. The lampshade matches perfectly. The color of the linen matches that creamy sweet Pickins milk paint to a T. And I think all the different layers of lace and trims that I used just gave it detail and whimsy. And you can't forget about that antique bronze rhinestone brooch that just gave it that touch of glam, bit of sparkle that we all need in our life. And don't forget, you can find all of the Sweet Pickins milk paint and products, as well as ReDesign with Prima, on my Etsy shop, the ShabbyBoutique 2.etsy.com. Let me know what you think of this project, and if you have any questions or something in particular you would like to see me make, or a product in particular you would like to see me use, feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you ever so much for watching, and until we meet again, have a most serendipitous day. Hugs to all. Love, Jewel.